Much, Ahmed. It's wonderful to be here as well. I'm looking forward to talking to you all about these topics, which I feel so passionate about. So I will be sharing my screen. There we are. Okay, great. So as Ahmed mentioned, I am founder of Helicon Consulting, which is a boutique consulting group that's focused on the science and technology strategy of cell-based meat. So today I'm going to be talking about large corporations particularly, which is one of my interest areas and focus areas, which is basically how can large corporations tap into the cellular agriculture revolution? Okay, I'm having trouble going forward in slides. Oh, there we are. Got it. Okay, so a little bit of backstory on myself and how I got into cellular agriculture. My background is in classical protein biochemistry. I did my undergrad degree followed by a PhD that was focused on biophysics, structural biology, and a cell biology department. And I was at Yale University. So if any of you know about Yale, Yale's in New Haven, Connecticut, which is a real food town. No one can really go to New Haven without trying some of the iconic pizza. It's considered one of the best pizzas in the United States. It's even got a name for itself. It's New Haven style pizza, which is characterized by this really thin crust, and it's called a Pete's. So the pizza you can see on your screen right now is from a place called Sally's Pizza in New Haven, which is one of the best pizza places in the world. It's my very, very favorite. And after a good time in New Haven, eating all the amazing food, I got really interested in how food works on a molecular level. So when I was finishing up my PhD, I started looking for companies that really shared an interest in innovation and early stage work, which is where I like to play, and also that were looking to use food in novel ways. So as a protein biochemist, I naturally started looking for companies that did fermentation science, protein science, and other related disciplines. So I quickly found Perfect Day Foods. Perfect Day is an innovative organization that many of you may have heard of that's working on making milk proteins. So I worked there for a bit and realized how similar the technology was to a lot of the work I was doing in the lab, and was really just blown away by the promise of this space. So following my time at Perfect Day and getting my PhD, I went on to work at New Harvest, heading up the research team there, focusing on developing how much basic research and basic science can support the areas of cellular agriculture and lab-grown meat. So why would corporations be interested in something kind of as far afield as cellular agriculture, lab-grown meat? First of all, there's an entire spectrum of innovation. Anything from plant-based to fermentation to lab-grown meat. So the great thing about it is that companies can kind of focus anywhere on that spectrum. Think either short-term, mid-term, or long-term. And all of these can have advantages towards really supporting stable pricing of proteins, which can really help companies understand what's coming at them and how they can price their product. So what you see in front of you is variations in protein pricing across the dairy industry for whole milk from the years of 1999 to 2014. As you can see, this number jumps around a whole bunch, while the trend is definitely upwards. This could understandably cause some issues for people that are trying to understand where the price will be tomorrow. So this is one of the big advantages that people see behind plant-based proteins is in general the more stable pricing and more consistency that it can bring to understanding the inputs to a lot of these food systems. Another great advantage when thinking about cellular agriculture products, just in terms of sheer utility and output from a company's perspective, is the fact that biomass goes up as organism size goes down. So organisms that tend to have a lot more cells and a lot more structure to them, so you think about things like cows or herring, or mice even, which are considered big by some standards, they're very complex. And so you can only get so many parts of nutrition out of these structured animals. But if you think about going less complex towards things like zooplankton, phytoplankton, algae, plant-based, et cetera, you can think about getting a whole lot more biomass and energy out of those samples, which translates pretty directly to more protein and more cost savings. So this is yet another way where it's easier to just stabilize the inputs of a system to get more of what you want in terms of outcomes and outputs. Another interesting component here that really has paved the way for these new food technologies is the regenerative medicine and biopharma space and the innovations in these industries. So since the 1990s, there have been a number of innovations in the regenerative medicine space that have really set the stage for some exciting science that could be translated over to the food space. So some of that science involved the use of different cell lines to create tissues that could be used in people. And the biopharma innovations really run the gamut, but include lots of things called large molecules, which are often used in cancer therapeutics and other contexts. So between the two of those, that's a whole lot of technology that can then be carried over into the food space and beyond, and which really shows you a little bit of the white space that people have in terms of innovating around food in this kind of new innovation spectrum. Another important component to address when thinking about new foods and how they could impact how we eat and how food gets made is the regulation. So part of the regulation that set things up really well for the alternative food space is the adoption of industrial enzymes used for clothing detergents and a spectrum around them of regulation called generally respected as safe. So generally respected as safe in the US is a particular regulatory framework that allows companies to establish for themselves the safety of products. So while no regulatory process is easy, this is a very transparent, straightforward process that a number of companies in the fermentation space particularly have been able to use on their products. To date, the Impossible Burger and Perfect Day have both filed GRAS filings. So this really set the stage for next level food technologies and how we could begin to kind of imagine them as we kind of move forward. So on that spectrum of innovation, it's important to talk about some of the different items that are available today and where they fit on that spectrum and what tomorrow could look like as well. So if we think about the products that are available today, one of the most widely available at the grocery store and at various startups and food tech hubs is the Beyond Burger. You can find it pretty much anywhere. And it's based on extrusion technology. So it's not a cell-based food or fermentation-based food, but it capitalizes on some really amazing technology from the 1960s that involves texturizing proteins. The Impossible Burger is a little bit more complex in a sense in that it involves novel proteins that are made in a different organism from the native organism that they were grown to make a protein called leg hemoglobin, which is a protein that attaches to iron and gives the Impossible Burger its red and meaty look. So that's a really exciting innovation, but it's also not yet cell-based. So the innovation continues if you start thinking about foods like Memphis Meat's cell-based meatball. In some ways, this represents the next step that hopefully we'll be able to eat within the next couple of years. And so that product is a mixture of cells that are from animals and also plant-based components. So that's a really exciting space where there have been a lot of innovations recently and where probably the next cell-based foods will come. It's products that are not structured, but that contribute lots of taste, flavor, and other components to a food product. And then if you think about things that are a little further along, while this is not yet quite a structured product, you can see here from the wild type salmon, the next frontier would be a thick meaty steak or sashimi piece, which could then let people really replicate the experience of eating meat. So those are probably on a longer time horizon, definitely what I'd consider in the realm of deep tech, but there's a lot of room to think about what could come between these two products or in various places around that innovation spectrum. So people talk a lot about consumer acceptance in cellular agriculture. I think a lot of major corporations are interested in that, concerned about it. It's definitely on the radar. And the best analogy I want to kind of have people think about today is the Herman Miller Aeron chair. So if any of you know of the Herman Miller Aeron chair, it completely failed a number of tests in terms of focus groups and what people wanted in an office chair. No one said they wanted that in any kind of focus group, and yet it's gone on to be the most famous office chair on the market. And part of that has to do with the fact that people oftentimes don't know what they want until they have it. So that's kind of my kind of thought piece, I think, to leave people with in terms of consumer acceptance is, while we may not necessarily have a mental framework for people accepting cell-based products today or fermentation products, it's likely not that far on the horizon. These products will be available, people will try them, like them, and acceptance of them may be, in fact, seamless. That remains to be seen, but I think there's strong potential that the consumer acceptance piece may be more straightforward than many people think. Also, with recent COVID times and food security concerns, people are really craving consistency in their food sources, dependability, systems that are robust, multifaceted, and capable of withstanding pretty much the strongest of food stressors. So everyone now is, I'd say, even more excited about adopting these new technologies as time moves on. We've just gotten a really strong reminder of the importance of these food systems and how it would be useful to have more robustness in different angles of food production. Which leads me to all the opportunities that are available for corporations in this space. There are a number of ways that cellular agriculture could fit into a corporate framework. Those are quite varied, either in terms of corporate responsibility, where it could fit into an agenda that has to do with nutrition, food security, the environment, and sustainability, whether it could involve getting involved in the robust startup landscape through either acquisitions or marketing and branding partnerships, or getting involved with developed companies for things like integrations into standard product lines. So some of these B2B technologies, especially in the fermentation space, may be great partners for companies in that way. So challenges for corporations, there are a number of these remaining. Finding the right fit is always a challenge, whether that's for corporate responsibility, for marketing, or innovation. It's a really complex field where you've got to get the fit right, and the technology can be really complex. So understanding exactly what's a good fit for your organization and where that can be is really key. Also, when you're thinking about different technologies, what fits best into the company's framework, what can be used the most readily. Fermentation technologies often seem like a really good fit for some companies, in that the technology they use has a lot to do with the biopharma space in terms of its history. Plant-based technologies integrate very well into a number of companies as well. And cell-based is really exciting because it's such a deep tech approach that companies could really get a leg up on a lot of that technology. Another kind of consideration for companies is really how things would get integrated, whether that has to do with current products or new ones. So figuring out what part of a production scheme these products could get to be a part of is always a big challenge. Similarly, feasibility of adding these products to a different supply chain or creating a framework for their use is really key and would be quite important in this integration. So my experience, again, I'm very excited to work with companies in this space. And my experience includes AB in biochemistry, PhD in cell biology. My deepest focus is on biochemistry and structure, which is a lot like fermentation technology. Because of my time at New Harvest, though, I've gotten to see a whole range of fermentation technologies and cellular agriculture techniques, so scaffolding, cells, media, etc. Bioreactor design as well. So I'm focusing on all of those in my consultancy, and I look forward to hopefully working with all of you in the future. Well, thank you all for taking the time to share some thoughts with me today, and thank you, Ahmed, for the opportunity to be here.